is that the space program that appears on the television news and has done these last few decades is actually only there as a movie to hide the real program, which is actually exploring things that these guys already know are there. There's this secret agenda in which advanced knowledge that people in general never hear is passed on to the chosen ones that are chosen to have this information and to move it through the generations. The agenda for centralized control and all that stuff. And then there's the movie, which is there to hide all that. And the movie is the official version of events that pours out of the television. They're being sold a cover story to hide what's really going on, not just in terms of the space program, but in every area of our lives. I mean, what is the more classic and obvious cover story than weapons of mass destruction? We've got to go and get them. And clearly, we see it was a cover story now. If you had a brain, you could see it was before. I've said in my latest book, Tales from the Time Loop, that we're looking at the Fourth Reich. And then I put under that brackets, or a continuation of the Third, which never ended. People have no idea, the general population, because no one tells them, of the fundamental connections between the Nazis. The people now think, oh yeah, the Nazis have gone, and the American administration. First of all, the Nazis were funded out of Britain and America. Why is it that they were taking their wages home in wheelbarrows during the Weimar Republic? Germany was in economic catastrophe. A few short years later, they have a war machine that's taking on the world. How did this come about? Anyone else? Well, let's ask the Bush family. Because, and this is not just me, other researchers have come up with this, and a guy called John Loftus, who is he runs the Holocaust Museum in Florida, that Prescott Bush, who is the grandfather of the present president, he was a major executive of the Harriman Empire in America. And they had a company called the Union Banking Corporation, the UBC, which interfaced with the banking and steel empire in Europe of a guy called Fritz Thyssen, who was named at places like the Nuremberg trial and elsewhere as a major funder of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. And what Prescott Bush, who was the key executive in the Union Banking Corporation, was doing was funneling money and other resources through the UBC into Thyssen's empire, and then it went to the Nazis, and that's where the war machine came from, also through the Bank of England.
Only yesterday, every business, every profession was part of Hitler's system. The doctors, technicians, clockmakers, postmen. Practically every German was part of the Nazi network. They believe they were born to be masters, that we are inferiors, designed to be their slaves.
A number of companies in which Prescott Bush was involved in were closed down during the Second World War under the Trading with the Enemies Act. William S. Farish, whose grandson is now Bush's ambassador to Britain, William S. Farish III, very close friend and horse interbreeder with the Queen of England. His grandfather, William S. Farish, was president of Standard Oil, the Rockefeller Oil Company, when it was exposed as supplying the Nazis with oil during the Second World War, while they were supposedly in conflict with America. So what you had then was this CIA, British intelligence operation called Project Paperclip, which was to get the Nazis, the major Nazis, with all and a lot that with tremendous knowledge that are not registered by history, out of Germany so they would be safe, and into South America and North America to continue this agenda up to the present day. And so this is why you have Nazi after Nazi turning up as founders of and creators of NASA and all these other institutions, the CIA, that appeared immediately after the Second World War.
T-minus 2 minutes and counting, and the countdown continues to move along smoothly. Now in the terminal countdown portion, we're standing by now to begin pressurization of the fuel tank. The second stage fuel tank pressurized, third stage fuel tank pressurized. The countdown continuing to move along smoothly, T-minus 90 seconds. Now looking at the liquid hydrogen tanks as they become pressurized. LH2 aboard the second stage, pressure 17. Final guidance release. We'll expect engine ignition at 8.9 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, ignition. Started, all engines are started. We have ignition, 2, 1, 0. We have a liftoff. We have a liftoff. And it's lighting up the area. It's just like daylight here at Kennedy Space Center as the Saturn V is booting off the pad. It has now cleared the tower. Mission control reporting. The launch vehicle maneuvering for the proper attitude. Everything looking good at this point.
In 2003, the skeptical magazine Fortean Times claimed that no such craft or Nazi secret space program had ever existed. But we have been given patents from leading German manufacturing companies, including Juha, Krups and BMW, which prove beyond all reasonable doubt that Hitler considered the Nazi secret space program a top priority. And more than 15 billion Deutschmarks were spent developing craft of all shapes and sizes. Secret memos from SS officers revealed that Werner von Braun and Hitler both believed that there were alien civilizations in the universe, and it was their intention to not only conquer all nations on planet Earth, but to also colonize the moon.
Gentlemen, the conquest of outer space is the greatest technological challenge of the age in which we live. The first decisive step in the conquest of space will be the placing of an object into an orbit wherein it will indefinitely circle the Earth.
1954. Sputnik 1 shocks the world and puts the USSR way ahead in the Cold War. Sputnik 2 takes a dog into space, the first living creature to leave the face of planet Earth. Russia then shocks the world by sending an unmanned probe to the moon. Meanwhile, the US Army plan Project Horizon, a plan to colonize the moon with Americans. This plan was soon abandoned when the true nature of the hostile environment of outer space was discovered by American and Russian scientists. (1958). Spectacular rocket failures destroy American morale. The Explorer 1 space probe confirms planet Earth is surrounded by dangerous radiation. Radiation so powerful that it could cause nausea and cancer. The Van Allen radiation belts and solar particles from the Sun are extremely hazardous to humans. Space is also full of micrometeorites which can rip through spacesuits and metal in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Russia celebrate getting the first man into space, Mr. Yuri Gagarin.
Well, there was already a parallel space program, and it had been continuing from even before the time that NASA was created in 1958. October 1958, NASA were incorporated by President Eisenhower. The secret space program was run by the Department of Defense. It took its original form in Project Horizon, which was established in 1959, the habitation of the colonization of the moon. The reason for that was that whoever controlled the moon controlled the Earth. If you could launch rockets from the moon onto your enemies on Earth, they couldn't possibly retaliate, therefore you had the upper hand. There was a serious attempt, certainly a serious investigation, to put man on the moon and keep him there. So the secret parallel space program continues to this day. There is a military space shuttle, and even the ones that we see from Columbia onwards are designed according to the specification of the Department of Defense. If you look at them, they will carry spy satellites into orbit. And if you want to know what a spy satellite looks like, the Hubble telescope is one. That is the design of what's called the KH-12, the keyhole satellites, which are used today over enemy territory, which is presumably any territory that is not American.
Regardless of the dangers of radiation, and without having spacesuits nor spacecraft which can protect the occupants from radiation, NASA convinced the American people to pay $40 billion for the space program.
The most lethal forms of radiation, of course, are at the higher end of the spectrum. That's gamma rays and X-rays. We know what ultraviolet can do. If you stay out too long in the sun, you get sunburn and skin cancer and die, and it's all very sad. But gamma rays, and X-rays especially, are particularly lethal to humans, unprotected humans. There was no protection that I have been able to identify. I've found no reference to it. I found nothing that will tell me what level of protection is offered, so I have to assume none was. I've contacted the manufacturers of the spacesuits, and they said there was no radiation protection built into the spacesuits, because I asked them if these same spacesuits could be used by technicians to go to Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island, because the nuclear reactors produce the same radiation as produced in space. They said no, not advisable, no protection.
Ex-Nazis were now in charge of vast amounts of tax dollars. In today's value, the Nazis at the heart of the NASA space program were given more than $600 billion. All NASA had to do was announce a new space project, and the money was handed over so that the American government could save face in the Cold War. Alan Shepard and John Glenn were blasted into space using equipment which was still in the prototype stage. John Glenn reports UFOs to Mission Control, which he describes as looking like fireflies, similar to the Foo Fighters reported by pilots during World War II. Werner von Braun and Hermann Oberth were later to confess that they both believe alien life forms exist and may have already visited planet Earth in the past. NASA soon learned that we are not alone in the universe. In Jonathan Eisen's excellent book, Suppressed Inventions, he interviews Werner von Braun's mentor and teacher, Dr. Hermann Oberth. Dr. Oberth makes it quite clear that he has studied the aeronautic performance of UFOs. In 1972, Dr. Hermann Oberth made the following statement.